Okay, let's call this Haysville Planning Commission to order. First item of business is the roll call.
Stock, Welch,
Present.
Meyer,
Here.
Coleman, here, Azier,
Here.
Wethington,
Here.
Green, Williams,
Here,
Hollow.
here.
Next item of business is approval of minutes of October 24th, 2019.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
With a motion and second, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? Under new business, we have the review of subdivision regulations.
Okay, and I did give you guys a little memo that I had intended to email you, but apparently I just didn't. So these are just some of my recommendations that don't include any of the spelling, grammar, formatting things. So I did talk about the subdivision committee, taking that out. Looking at it, the main reason after looking at it again, am suggesting that we remove that is A, to kind of eliminate another body to go to, and B, some of the spots it wasn't clear, or maybe I just wasn't understanding what the rules were, when they would get together, and in some places it says that they needed to approve, but then in other places it didn't really define what the next step was very well.
So removing it rather than cleaning up that language.
That's what I'm proposing, but it's
I'm
totally up to you guys.
fine with the discussion.
Yeah.
I think from where I sit, it was a step where a few people went over it and looked at,
Right.
let's make this easement a drainage and utility easement and not just a drainage easement. Simple stuff like that doesn't necessarily have to go in front of the whole body. I think the idea of keeping this meeting shorter was the reason for that.
Mhm.
But as few subdivisions as we've seen in the last few years, I think it's probably fine to have that open discussion at our regular meetings, and
Mhm.
we'll have to go to a meeting that's more than 15 minutes, but
Right.
we're just gonna run that risk. Okay, so I don't is there any discussion about that first item, just removing the subdivision committee?
No, I think that's good.
Yeah, and I felt like my other thought, kind of when you talk about drainage easements, is we're supposed to be sending it to all the utility companies anyway, to the city engineer, to the public works and all those. Hopefully the smaller things would be caught with them as well. I know that obviously mistakes happen, but
Well, some of the
So
stuff
by
that
the
I'm
time it comes
remembering that we
here-
went through and comments that I made on previous plats was, you've got a easement running on back lots of a subdivision that's next to an open field that's probably going to be platted. You can make that a 10-foot easement rather than a 20, knowing that the next plat could pick up the other half.
right.
Stuff like that is,
Yeah.
they're not going to catch probably,
Right.
but
Probably not that, but
yeah, okay.
that's my first recommendation. Second would be, to replace the wording requiring, right now, I think we require 30 copies of everything, which is a little excessive these days.
It's a little,
Especially since most people do want them in a digital format.
Yeah.
So I think if we just, maybe a larger map plat, we do need more copies. But for most of them, we could require 12 or however many review
but leave
bodies
that
we
number
have.
flexible depending on what it is.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, because I know I just threw away, I didn't throw it away, I recycled a ton of plats, just going through and trying to knock the files down. So.
Okay.
The other would be to update sections on the streets to require the sidewalks. So I've been reviewing some of the other codes and plans that have recently been adopted. The bicycle pedestrian plan in particular talks about having sidewalks on some of the arterial or collector, even if it's tying to existing bike paths, and just trying to,
Does the bicycle plan specifically call out minimum size, any of that stuff?
it does, depending
Okay.
on what its use is, either 6 or 10
That was
feet.
my only comment, was if we don't call that out at some point, we need to probably do that in our code if it's not done there.
Right. It is in there depending on what the use is. I do hate to have it in too many different places in case you change one.
Yeah.
That would be one, and then erosion control standards, I'm just kinda getting into those, but I do feel like in the sub-regs, we do need to make sure that the plats are allowing for controlling what the building materials, and loose gravel.
Agreed.
And then on the Article 8, it does talk about improvement procedures, and when people are petitioning for improvements, it does have the percentage of 35%. Really, I just feel like a lot of that could be shorter, because most of that is regulated by city council anyway, and could be through a separate resolution on their behalf. They're really the money people and would set that. I don't know that it needs to be set through planning in the subdivision regulations.
Okay.
Those were my big things. There were a few different definitions that I thought maybe could be placed differently, or
I was wondering
tweaked.
about the definitions also, like condominium and track and variance aren't listed, and I think those might be good to add to that.
okay.
There's probably more, but those stuck out to me.
I didn't have those. I had things like all the streets, maybe instead of having them alphabetically, maybe have street and then define the different types, just to make it easier to look for.
Avenue, street,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well, arterial collector, dead end. And then, let's see, some of the ones within some flood zone terminology. Should I read it? I know it was updated to include some of the new regulations when the new floodplain maps were distributed, and we have new things that we have to set up, so I do want to go back and refer to those and make sure we're in compliance with that. And then, those were kind of really the main things that I saw, but happy to hear what you guys have noticed also.
Anybody else have things for the subdivision regulations they'd like to discuss?
Yeah, I just wondered, I'm not familiar with how these things work, but why not put page numbers on the title page? If somebody wanted to take a quick look at that.
I totally agree with that.
There's no page
Great idea.
If you learn how to do it, and it's not easy, Word can do that for you.
Mm-hmm. You would think it'd be easier, wouldn't you?
It wasn't for me.
Okay, any other discussion on subdivision regulations before we move on?
Section 3, should notification of neighbors, or is that on there somewhere, duties of the Haysville Planning Commission?
What page is that?
Page 3. I mean, I think we always do that, but it's not written on
What page are we on?
3.
For plats, we don't, it's not a requirement.
It's not?
Like in zoning.
there. Okay.
Oh, I have to bring it.
Now, depending on the development coming in, there may be zoning before the plating happens, and then that would notify them.
Okay,
So
but if
it's
you're
gonna
just
be-
platting ground that's already been zoned, it's not
Right.
required.
Okay.
I'm gonna wait for you to get through the rest of that.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that was it. Yep. So,
Okay. So if there is no other discussion for subdivision regulations, we will move on to zoning regulations.
I will just real quick add that I'll put those together and bring that the next meeting.
Okay. Is this distribution and discussion or just distribution?
That's up to you, since you're just getting it today. I didn't know if you wanted to discuss, but I did put together kind of how I thought we should approach things. And then some comments that, just since I've been back, people have asked about or asked me to look into as far as the zoning code.
So that's on the back.
Yeah.
Everybody else can't find it, like
Okay.
me.
I was trying to conserve paper.
Yeah, that's fine.
I was staring at the front.
But now we can divide it however you guys want to look at it. Some people like starting at the front and going to the back. I was just thinking if you're looking at the zoning district first, and if you want to add some different businesses, then we'd have to go back through the definitions. So might as well start there.
We're fine with
and then
however you want
start
to do it.
over.
If you've already thought about it, you're way ahead of us.
I did think about it. Now, it is a large document, but some of the things I did notice looking through the districts, and then some of the things talking about with other departments. Assisted living facility does seem to be gaining more popularity with the older generations. That would be a little less intense than the nursing homes. So I have
Is
been
that what it
asked
would
to
be
look
now?
at.
If we had that facility, it would have to be classified as a nursing home, and we're just trying to create another category that's not as rigorous?
Right,
Okay.
right.
Well, I think that allows us to look at different contractors also and different regulations, if it's nursing home.
Yeah, I'm fine, I'm just making it clear to everybody, so we're all on the same page.
Right, and then, it is felt on staff level that might be in a residential, most nursing homes end up being commercial areas, but maybe something we could look at, because it is, the traffic's gonna be less of an impact, maybe it could be something that could be allowed in a residential district as a conditional use, so it wouldn't be allowed outright.
But adjacent
It's
to
open, yeah.
something like a mixed use,
Right, right.
I think that probably makes sense.
And then it was brought up the other day about, how many accessory structures can a property have in a single family residential? The way it stands currently, you can really, as long as you meet the setbacks, have as many as you want. Which, I did not find, at least in the A single family, that we have any lot, bulk regulations. You can put however many front setbacks, so you really can't go above that, but in the backyard, there's really no requirement to maintain a whole lot of rear yard. It's 10 foot for your accessory or 3 foot on the side once you pass that rear.
I thought I remembered that there was a percentage of lot coverage,
I remembered that too.
but you don't find it.
I did not find that in the single family. There is in some of the commercial and multiple family, but not in the single family.
And in newer neighborhoods, that's covered under the HOA regs, but not.
A lot of times, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be, yeah.
Do the HOA regulations, are they cleared by the city
Yeah.
to make sure that they're within the,
A lot of times they're presented with the plating process, but if there's once that plat's approved, any changes made through the HOAs would not come back before the city. And the city cannot enforce it.
But either way, they can't be less restrictive than the city code.
Right.
So if you're talking about coverage on a lot, say you have a small lot, you have the same size house as both of your neighbors on either side, and you all have small backyards, but you want to essentially pave the whole backyard with a pool. How would your new requirement cover that?
I think that, I don't think you could do a blanket for all residential districts. I think for like the 0 lot line, the smaller patio home type zoning, you'd have to go up maybe to 75% lot coverage, where maybe some of the larger lots, you could go to 30% or 40%. So I
Okay.
think you'd need to look at each district
Is that new construction, or are you talking about
for
No, that
any
would apply
lot.
to everybody.
so if
I
somebody?
mean, it would affect any new, if it's already there, it would fall
So
within
if
the
somebody's
non-conforming.
overdoing it now, you'd go.
If they were doing it right now, it'd be
They'd be
a
grandfathered in.
non-conforming,
Oh,
yeah.
That's what I was thinking of. There's a particular house that I'm thinking of that it's a regular size house, and the backyard is just small enough that they put in a regular pool and with a concrete deck around it, and that's the backyard. I don't think that really affects the neighbors, but I don't want to say you can't, and nobody can have a pool in their backyard because of this requirement that we're putting on.
I know. I go back and forth personally on, somebody's lot, as long as they're staying so far away,
Yeah.
do whatever you want to, well, maybe you still want to make sure it's a little appealing. So it was brought up, it was discussed, so I'm just
But the
presenting it.
appeal is to the individual, so,
Right. You can't make everybody happy.
Well, the difference though is we're talking about a pool, and if we do that, then all of a sudden you can have your entire backyard be
Full of
a
shit.
series of sheds full of.
yeah, yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure that if we're gonna restrict like that, that we're cognizant of what we're really doing. I get the intent.
Yeah, and I think I jumped down. I think I didn't do a very good job keeping these together, but further down, another item came up where accessory structures. Yes, they're building 2 or 3 feet or 3 stories. You can do that, which is fine, but some accessory structures are actually larger than the house itself.
Yes.
Do you want to look at, could only be 75%, but then you have some lots that are only, the house was only 900 square feet, but they do want a 3-car garage in the back that exceeds it. So I don't know that there's any good answer.
Well, at this point though, if you're gonna build an accessory structure, you've gotta bring that here to be approved, right?
Not necessarily.
If it's a certain size, isn't it over,
Certain size.
which is over what, 10 by 12? Has to be
I
approved?
think so.
Which
Something
I think
like that.
covers our, I'm gonna build a 3-story shed behind my house. I think that's already covered, and we can handle that on a case-by-case basis without really restricting our code.
Mhm.
I know of one that was built within this last year. It didn't come here, and it is probably the size of the house or larger than the house.
But that's a compliance issue, not,
But it would depend on the house. So if it's a 1,200 square foot allowed, but their house is 1,000 square foot, then. I know that there used to be that restriction. I don't remember reading it, but I'd have to go back again on the 1,200 square feet.
I'm pretty sure I've seen it within the last year.
Okay.
But if you can't find it, then we need to find out why and probably try to replace that.
Yeah. See, this one came from the building inspector. He's had several people complain to him, and I don't know that it's really an issue, that with the side yard of 6 foot on each side, then later on when they want to add something, they can't get a driveway back, so maybe we could do 8 foot on one side. And
But that's not gonna apply
I'm
to,
presenting it.
that's not gonna apply to anything that's already built in town, right?
No. No,
Okay.
there's nothing you can do about it now.
And most of the newer neighborhoods, at least mine, it's got a bigger side yard setback than what was required by the city in the first place.
Well, and also, most newer ones have 3-car garages,
Yeah.
so they're not needing as much to get their car in the back anyway. Okay, and then there's a lot of single-family residential zones. And there may be a purpose for all of them, but it seems like maybe we could look at reducing to maybe 3 or 4.
So just so everybody's clear, what's the purpose of having different zones for single-family residential?
It's usually the bulk regulation, so size of lot, size of house on the lot, and regulating maybe the setbacks. Some of the, so like the 0 lot line, that one I would definitely keep because it does allow more of the patio homes
Mhm.
that are gonna be closer together. We do have the AAA now, that's a lot larger, and within that one, there were some more uses allowed for when the city was annexing properties outside that had already been established neighborhoods. But in looking at, now I can't remember the name of it. I think it's the AC district, it's a larger lot one, maybe those could be combined a little bit. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I think there's the tiny home added also, so that would be 7 single-family districts.
Do you want to take a stab at reducing that to what you think is the correct number?
Yeah.
And we can just discuss it?
And then looking at doing, skipping on, adding dwelling units on top of, in maybe a more neighborhood type district, or it's not a great need that I see in Haysville right now, but maybe something that we want to start looking at, making either a neighborhood district that's a little less intense, that we provide sidewalks to, is more of a buffer district between some of the heavier, intense commercial districts, putting zoning. As, I'm ready to prepare for Haysville to grow bunch here soon, so.
Okay.
Then, mobile food vendors are increasing in popularity, and we need to allow for those in the commercial districts.
What's the process now?
Well, we're getting ready to adopt a code to allow mobile
Okay.
food. Currently, they're really just allowed for the larger community-wide events. But if somebody were to want to bring one in for, I think they've just been considered the temporary portable business, which is allowed. But we are getting ready to adopt as a city, mobile food code, so it's a little more restrictive on getting those trailers inspected with the health department, fire department. So
There's
just
no
something
permitting process now or anything?
through the temporary there is, but not through.
Okay.
So we're getting ready to permit them, and it would just be simple, mobile food vendors as regulated by whatever the new code number ends up being.
And I'm assuming we're going to try and keep that in line with what is done.
Everywhere.
Okay.
We want to try to keep it in line with Wichita, because it's where the bulk of them are coming from.
So inspection there covers inspection here also?
It's through Sedgwick County, Sedgwick
Yeah.
County Health Department, and then the county fire department just adopted codes for their inspection to just be once a year, and it would go through all communities.
Okay.
We just want to make sure we're business friendly.
Agreed?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Those were the big highlights I saw.
So is your goal to try to work through this for the December meeting? Or is that too
Oh,
quick?
that's totally whatever you want to do.
Well,
So you're gonna do it.
Yeah, you're the one that's got to actually do the work.
I guess my thought was, I wasn't sure, I'm totally good with having it ready for the December meeting, but are you guys wanting to have a December meeting?
Well, I guess that's the question. If we don't, that'll be essentially a month and a half without, which isn't unprecedented for us, but
I would like to see us meet once a month,
yeah.
because I feel like doing that keeps everybody remembering that there's a meeting and
That we still
on
exist.
track.
I'll leave it up to you. If you think you can get through it and
Yeah.
have something for us by the December meeting, then
Yeah,
I think that's probably something that's important enough for us to meet to discuss.
yeah,
But
gives us a month.
if it becomes more than, I don't want you working nights and weekends to cover what essentially can be pushed till January.
Yep, nope, we can do that.
Okay. Any other discussion about the zoning regulations or questions or comments?
And if any of you have questions, please feel free to email or call me throughout the weeks.
No old business, no correspondence, informational reading. Are there any committee updates?
The Historic Committee's Village Christmas is Saturday, December 7th, starting at 5:30 with the city lighting. We've got soup and chili, Santa, carolers, crafts, cookies and cocoa, and silent auction and other things. Oh, buggy rides. And the trick or treat on Main Street went really, really well. I had heard around 1,800 folks went through that. It was a beautiful evening. The temperatures went up, the rain quit, and great event. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other committee updates?
I think I would add on the historic committee, and if you've noticed a lot of work going on there, there've been a lot of repairs that have taken place.
Yes.
So the marketplace was leaning,
Wirehouse.
it's not anymore. The Wirehouse, the community building, their siding's been replaced, they're getting repainted. There was a roof leak and some mold damage
Mhm.
because of it. It's just not used very often anymore, so it wasn't caught until pretty late, so. The mold's been abated, termites have been treated. We are putting up new sheetrock, painting, flooring, adding a bathroom. So there's a lot of work going on in the historic district.
We still looking for a church?
We are still looking for a church. We're looking at different alternatives now, but yes.
Any off agenda? Item 9.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, everybody.
There hasn't been one